Hi everyone, it's Dr. Janet. As we get into week 7, I know several of you are hooping and hollering. You're happy that we're getting almost done with this course. And I apologize in advance for, the amount of information that has been thrown at you on this course. It is a lot of information. We are going over advertising and design. And sometimes course designers throw in a ton of information. It's really no different than if you were working in a job somewhere in a company. All of this stuff would be thrown at you, and because there is so much information to go over, sometimes it does seem a little overwhelming, but you guys are doing great. And I want to go over, as we get into Module 7, this is where we've got, as it says here, the campaign finalization and review. And instead of working so hard to try and find peer-reviewed articles, or maybe you can't find something in the library because you may not be searching for the correct search term, whatever the case may be, please go to your reading and resources in the classroom. Whenever I have commented on my feedback and maybe you did not earn enough points, say for example, if you did not include enough resources, for example, if you only included 1 or 2 sources of information, whenever you see and read on the rubric that it's asking for several or many examples, please always make note that that means that you need to have at least 3. Otherwise, if the rubric just said an example or a couple, an example would be 1, a couple obviously would be 2. When you see several or many, that means that you need to have 3 or more. And the reason for that is because we do a lot of research in marketing. We're constantly researching our target audience. We're trying to understand what they're thinking or try to predict it. It's very hard to do so, but we have a lot of Google tools that we use. It's not in this class, but we have some other classes where we do go into a lot of the Google Analytics and things like that. In this course, you're actually putting a lot of application to work. So there is a lot that has to be done. Now, when you look at your learning objective and you go to your reading and your resources, you'll see here that in your book, you will be reading Advertising Creative in Chapter 16. And then there's a link here to the library, which talks about creating presentations that get results. And again, on a presentation, less is more on your slide. And now with me saying that, that means on your slides, you want to have very short, very brief bullet points and throw in at least one image that represents what that slide is talking about. So basically, as you're creating your slides for this client presentation, each slide will correspond to each of the weeks that you guys have talked about in your groups and what your final, so like you will start with your SWOT analysis, you go to your big idea, your SMART goals, and then move on down through the weeks. And those are what you're going to be including in your presentation. Now, since some of those discussions have a lot of content, instead of grabbing all that content and throwing a whole page on a slide, which will be difficult and impossible to read, you will take bits and pieces out of that, make a very clean slide, and then all of that excess text that you have from your final drafts and your discussions, you'll put that down in the slide notes that's in the bottom of the slides. When you're using PowerPoint, sometimes you have to drag the bar up so that you can see your slide notes, or you can always get to your slide notes from using the top toolbar. And that's where you put the bulk of the information. So for example, if you don't cite your source on a slide, please make sure that you've cited any of the sources you've used for that slide in your slide notes. I need to see that somewhere. And then your very final slide is going to be your references slide. You don't need to worry so much about formatting that references slide. I want to make sure that you have it there. Don't just copy and paste a URL link. Make sure that you're putting your slides and your information in correctly as far as your references. And that should also include your 6 from your annotated bibliography. An example here is another source you could use if, for example, you didn't want to use PowerPoint. You have Prezi, and there's a link here that shows you how to do presentations. You can use that one as well. There's another link here. It says beyond the bullet points, better way to use PowerPoint. Then there's another one, really bad PowerPoint, how to avoid it. For example, this would be something I've gone over previously where you don't want to have a black background and then red text or yellow text because it's very hard on the eyes to read. You want it to be presentable. And as you're creating this presentation, just keep in mind that do it with the thought that you're presenting it to your company leaders. Imagine that you're the marketing director and you're trying, you've worked with your team, you've put together this huge presentation, this big campaign, and now you're putting it into a PowerPoint presentation and you're going to present it to your company leaders. And so everything we've worked on throughout our term, you're going to take all that information, put them on the different slides, and then you'll have your complete presentation. So this is where you can get creative. This is where you will, use that personal touch of your own. So if you decided to create a logo, for example, maybe you did or you didn't share it with your group, since something like that wouldn't have been a requirement to do, go ahead, if you created it and you had time to do it, throw it in there. This is your opportunity to use these skill sets that you've learned to try and put this presentation together. Because at the end of the day, most company leaders want to cut marketing departments and they want to cut our dollars down. And so when we can give a very good presentation and cover all of the bases and answer the questions of the who, what, when, where, and why, that helps to appease the minds of your company leaders so that they can understand why you want to spend $1 million or $5 million or maybe even $5,000 for whatever the campaign would encompass. It doesn't matter if it is $5,000 or $5 million. To the company owners, the company leaders, you need to justify why you're doing what you're doing, why your team is doing what they're doing, why you're going for these ads, and how you're going to go about it. And so this is where you have the opportunity to put all these weeks of your discussion boards posts, put them into this presentation so that you can say, well, here, and then your sources of information are always going to be your proof, because that's how you justify all of your research. Then this final one here is the presentation on Google Slides. Again, that's just another opportunity to do a PowerPoint presentation, for example, or something similar. Just make sure that regardless of which program you use, that you do have your slides clean and that you do have your presentation notes at the bottom. So when everybody submits their final presentation in week 8, I will literally be opening up every single presentation. I will be reading every single slide, looking at every single slide note. And yes, it will take me longer than it will on normal assignments and papers, but I need to be able to read through it. And if you follow the order of the rubric and you put your slides in the order of how the rubric has it listed, it's going to make it easier for me to follow. It's going to follow the flow and the format of the presentation and how it needs to be presented. And at the end of the day, I'll be able to read it more effectively and grade it quicker. But at the same time, you'll be following that process because your rubric is going to always list the order and how your things are supposed to be presented. When you go to this plan finalization and presentation section, it just goes over some information on the written plan and on your presentation, just a little bit more information on what I had mentioned earlier. And then you have your 7-1 final project milestone 4. Again, that's what I talked about. You've got your links to your rubrics and everything there. You also have in your final project a group evaluation form. This is where you have the opportunity to evaluate your team members in your group. Everything is confidential, so don't worry if you had a group where everybody was participating and you guys worked well together. Make sure that you present that information. Now, if you had a group where you had people that are missing, and I will say a side note that we have had some students that have not made it through the course. They have, dropped out for one reason or another. So in those cases where the groups were missing either one or a couple of people, you just had to keep moving forward with it. The way that the course designers created this is that all of these different, quote, group assignments and discussions could have been done individually without the group interaction. So it's not like you're a group of 4 or you're doing a project and it's something that would be split among 4 people. It's actually a project that you could literally do on your own But what we've done is that we have the group interactions, so that normally in the class like this, we have groups of 2. Since we had classes that had full student load of 25 to 28 students, in this case, we had 28, so I had to split up everybody into 4 groups of 4. And again, so if you had some classmates that were missing, there's a good chance that the reason they're missing is because they're no longer in the class. So I hope that for that case, you understand that you needed to keep moving forward and just keep on posting. I've continued to read. This week in week 6, I did make comments on the IMC and how you're going to go through your creative or ICM. And so anyway, on your group member evaluation form, this is where you have the opportunity. I want to see if I can open this here, what this looks like. And okay, so here's your form that you have. And again, it's got some information here. And you've got, as you see, this part here is kind of like a repeat of what our rubric shows when you look at that overall rubric. And here you can say, how your level of effort toward the project, the quality of the effort, input, and it just goes on down the list, and you can just put your information here. And here's your key up here. So this is where you have the opportunity to rate it. And so that's your group member evaluation form. And then that just would lead us into Module 8, which would be our final week. I'll just quickly go over Module 8. When we get to Module 8, and our one discussion board that we have, your discussion topic for week 8, you're going to take your final PowerPoint presentation that I discussed. We're going to take that. That's your client presentation. You're going to upload your own presentation to the discussion board. I highly recommend that you please upload by Wednesday, because that is Thursday at the latest. Thursday is our due date, but the earlier you get it up, the better it's going to be for you, because each of you are going to need to give feedback on your classmates that you see within that presentation area. And just give your feedback. You're going to take that feedback and you're going to tweak your presentation so that once your presentation is complete and you've made some adjustments based on what your classmates have said to you, then for your assignment for 8.2, you're going to upload your completed final presentation to your assignment area. And then that's what you're going to be graded on for that final assignment. And again, here is your presentation rubric. And there's some links here again. It goes over the presentation. I did a video previously earlier in the term to go over this. And then here's where your presentation, this is what I will be grading on. Hopefully you're looking down this exemplary column, because this is what I hope, well, I'm not going to highlight everything, but this is where I hope that everybody meets this information. If you don't, then I have to go to the next segment below that. So that's how you're graded. So as you can see, you've got 100%, 85%, 55%, or 0 if you're not including it. So there's different criteria that you get graded on. Anyway, I hope that this helps to clarify and go over what we need to do for our Module 8 and also for Module 7. So I did go ahead and include both of them in there just so you could get the final overview on what is expected. And so just to recap, yes, all of the information that you guys have been talking about over the course of the term and the group discussions, you will be taking your final drafts from each week. And hopefully you've already started working on your PowerPoint presentation and get that inserted into your slides and be working on your slides for that client presentation. And hopefully that answers any additional questions that you may have had. And I look forward to seeing you in the classroom. Thank you so much, everybody. Bye-bye.